Jarvis is actually a PhD student under the supervision of Alex Boulton. He has a double
co-tutel, dual PhD program.
Yeah, co-PhD, a co-tutel between the University of Malaysia and the University of Lorraine. And his interests are naturally in data-driven learning and also statistics, which is what he's going to present to us right now. I cannot find the title, I'm sorry. So you will present your own title.
All right, I will share my screen and you let me know if everything is
Thank you very much.
good, right? Okay.
What is the title?
All right, is it good?
Works perfectly.
All right. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Like Alexandra has presented myself, my name is Jarvis Looi, a PhD candidate under co-tutel or dual PhD program between Malaysia and France. So I'm honored to be among you today. So without further ado, I'm presenting to you data-driven learning, teaching French adjective based on Bayesian's logistic regression. Teaching a foreign language, especially at a foreign country like Malaysia, the use of language manual is unavoidable. These manuals are supposed to contain everything we need to teach French, but they are not always useful when it comes to a particular grammatical construct like adjective placement. Like Italian and in Spanish, French adjective can be placed before and after the noun with or without causing semantic changes. So there are a few issues that were problematic to me when I taught French using these manuals. First, it is the use of general wordings in the rules, like certain adjective or in general or sometime. And then these rules are often provided only in the appendix. Language examples are often provided without context. Like for example, we see the example here in non xianga can be interpreted both as a formal station, which means it's no longer a station, or an old station. Without the context, we simply cannot know which one is it. And the long list of examples provided usually in these manuals are provided seemingly for memorization because there is no context. And then the rules often give false impressions that adjective placement is easy. For instance, for the particular adjective ancien, the manuals seems to suggest that there is a complementary distributions where a position is reserved for a particular meaning. Lastly, these manuals do not always mention the semantic variability associated with the placement. In corpus linguistics, we know that it is always the common and easy adjective that can be placed in both positions and therefore are polysemous. Hence, not teaching this grammatical phenomenon to beginners potentially put them in situations where they cannot comprehend some of the most common adjectives. So in these presentations, there will be two parts. In the first part, we'll try to understand the placement of ancien using statistics, and then we'll move on to the second part where we try to create DDL activities using the techniques of, using the data analysis. Today, we picked up the example provided in the manual, ancien. Ancien is indeed non-prototypical. It is what we call in French grammar or linguistic the adjective of the third type. These are adjectives that cannot be categorized under the two traditional French categories, qualitative and relational adjective. In traditional grammars, these adjectives are usually treated as others, and in linguistic analysis, ancien has been analyzed so differently. And pedagogically speaking, ancien is highly frequent. In the corpus of for the study of contemporary French, ancien appeared 214 times per million word in the written component and 46 million times per million words in spoken French. To note that the corpus is 10 million words. It is also useful for learners thanks to its high frequency. Ancien is ranked 392nd in the top 5,000 most frequently used French word. And because it is complicated due to its polysemous and variable placement, so it requires additional attention in learning. Now let's quickly take a look why ancien is complicated. In the corpus, ancien appears around 1,700 times, and 76% appear before the noun and 24% after the noun. So we can safely say that ancien prefer the anteposition. But what if we consider the production mode? We see immediately that we don't use ancien a lot in spoken French, accounting for only 7% of the total occurrences. In spoken French, the distribution between the two positions is 50-50. On the other hand, in written French, 78% are in NT position. So what it seems clear, the distribution, what if we consider the meaning then? Now, the distribution given the meaning of ancien is very neat. About 50% of the total occurrences have the meaning which exists for a long time, and in this meaning, the distribution is also 50-50. The other 50% of the total occurrences have the meaning former, and we see that it is impossible to have ancien as former in post position. Now, so far, I have only shown you two variables, production mode and meaning. However, adjective placement is a multifactorial linguistic phenomenon. The dataset has been annotated for 17 variables of different linguistic levels. That is why we need statistics to discern the effect of each variable, to find out the more important variables, and to make sure that they are not due to chance. For the analysis, I employed Bayesian's mixed effect binomial logistic regression. There are a few things that we're interested in the table. For example, which variable is statistically associated with the placement of ancien, and which is the most and least important variable. As it takes time to read the table, I have prepared a summary. There are in total 6 credibly non-zero variables, that is how we say significant in Bayesian statistics, that include genre, meaning, liaison, coordination, additional adjective, and gender. In terms of genre, there's a dichotomous split between spoken and written French. The written genre are all associated with NT position, while spoken French is associated with post position. Then meaning is the strongest predictor due to its very large estimate. The meaning form, when ancien means former, post position is impossible. As ancien as former is frequently used to indicate a person's past occupation or status, which often take the masculine form, like ancien premier ministre and ancien président, former prime minister and former president. So masculine nouns are also associated with NT position. Apart from this, ancien and coordination prefer post position. For example, in art ancien et contemporain, ancient and contemporary art, and then when there is another adjective in post position, that ancien will be placed in NT position. For example, you say les anciennes pratiques commerciales, the old commercial practices. Okay, and lastly, we have liaison. Obligatory ones prefer NT position and optional ones prefer post position. So having learned everything that we need to know about the placement of ancien, then we can move on to the second part to create classroom activities based on this result using the techniques of data-driven learning. So as we have discussed, as presented by Carlos at the beginning of the presentations, DDL is a term coined by Tim Jones and can be simply understood as the direct use of corpora in language learning classroom. DDL is also process-oriented, in which the learner will learn how to learn something using a corpus. DDL is inductive because the learner will explore authentic language data and make hypotheses about language patterns and tendency. Lastly, this approach allows what is called condensed reading, where the learner will extensively and intensively read samples of authentic language. Now, there are basically two types of DDL, right? Paper-based and hands-on DDL. So paper-based DDL have the following characteristic. The examples are selected, unnecessarily complex grammatical elements are removed, the concordances are presented as complete sentences, and the proportions of the observed distributions are respected. So in the first example here, we focus on the noun collocates of ancien and how these nouns can predict the meaning and subsequently the placement of ancien. In the first group, for example, we have nouns denoting professions, and we know that when ancien means former, post position is impossible, and therefore the students will only find this example all in NT position. With objects, ancien strongly prefer post position, and therefore we have 5 post position and 1 NT position. In the last group, we have abstract entities. In this case, the distribution is less clear-cut, so NT position is slightly preferred. Therefore, we have 4 NT position and 2 post position. Of course, we don't just show this line to students without any explanation. A set of instructions is also provided. In the first step, they will observe the different nouns, different form of ancien, and make hypotheses of why this form exists and are used. In the second step, they will be asked to identify and observe the nouns. In this step, they will try to understand how the adjective is used differently with different kinds of noun. In the next step, they will figure out the meaning with different nouns and try to describe the usage of ancien, taking into account the noun collocates and the meaning and position of ancien. Lastly, we can test their understanding by asking them to translate a few sentences. Now, approaching the end of the presentation, I would like to show you how hands-on DDL can be made possible using freely and easily accessible resources online. Hands-on DDL is, in this version of DDL, the learner is required to directly explore language data in corpora. This is the hard versions because the learning process is up to the learner with or without the teacher's guidance. Using free of charge tools like corpora collection logistic and English for French, we can construct an activity where the learners is to complete the grammatical rules for placing ancien. For example, we can say that ancien has at least two meanings. They will try to use these tools to try to identify these two meanings and provide observation to support their hypothesis. Or we can ask them, what is the position preferred by ancien in coordination? Again, they will have to search the corpora to look for the answer. I have two little videos to show you how these two resources can be used. If you go to this website, Corpora Collection Leipzig, you can simply search for the word that you are interested in. And then you will bring you to this site, and on the right side, you will see immediately the statistically associated noun collocates, and in the middle, you have the concordances. You can always add more lines if you need to, because they are based on online resources. And scrolling to the bottom, then you will see the collocates occurring in the same sentence, and those specifically to the left or right of the word that you search for. Okay, so this represents the written part of the corpus. Then we can move on to Youglish. Youglish is a website that will extract videos from YouTube in which appear the word you search for, and the videos are preloaded to seconds before the word is pronounced, and therefore you can use it almost like a spoken corpus. So if you search for the word ancien again in Youglish for French, then you click say it, then you will gain access to all these YouTube videos, and they are preloaded.
Donc, Philippe Lefebvre, ancien journaliste de France 2, qui participe.
You can click next to access more videos.
Chaussures faites sur mesure en crocodile à un ancien ministre. Donc, voilà une manière avec en même temps.
You can adjust the speed if you
Edward
need to.
Snowden, c'est cet ancien sous-contractant de la NSA qui vient de révéler, on est en novembre 2013, l'ampleur de la surveillance.
All right. So in this short interview, I have shown you how we can teach French without always relying on language manuals, and how a linguistic analysis can fit into the creation of classroom activities. These activities promote learners' agency and encourage their active participation in their knowledge construction. I think the key is to raise awareness among learners that language is messy and highly variable. Sometimes linguistic phenomena do interact with each other and make learning that more difficult. Most importantly, I think there are no absolute grammatical rules, but only tendencies in language. And I'm sorry, I take 2 minutes more than the time allocated.
Do not worry, really.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I know your work, and I love that we are so attached to English, both you and I. We use it. I'm gonna present it as well, because we work together on English. So for those who don't know this tool, hopefully you may integrate it into your teaching or into your research, because it is a pretty useful tool. Easy to use and very user-friendly. So thank you very much, Jarvis, for your presentation. It was really interesting. Any questions?
Yeah, okay, I guess I have one small comment, let's say a bit of a reflection. Let's do it quickly because time is running out. But I was very interested to see that the adjective position varied greatly when you looked at written corpora and then spoken corpora.
Yep.
So what do you think, how does this relate to the usefulness, let's say overall contribution of multimodal corpora to data-driven learning?
Well, I think it's important to point out to learners that language will work slightly differently when it is written or when it is spoken. And research has shown that in the French context, I cannot speak for other languages. In French, we tend to use an adjective in its default position, even though that adjective is variable, highly variable in written context. they will always have a default position in spoken language. And I think so in this way, I think you will show the learners that you can consider more how to use an adjective in written context, but there is always a default position when you speak it. I think it's simply important to show this fact and help them gain awareness that there's a difference in spoken French and written French. And I think that is about it. You know, as long as they're aware of it, then they can reproduce the learning methods in other contexts.
Okay.
Do you think this approach is actually feasible to be applied also for French for specific purposes?
Sorry, come again?
Yeah,
Is it?
they're hearing you. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's actually an approach feasible to be applied for French for specific purposes?
French. The last word I didn't hear it. So it's a French specific corpora. That is what you said, right?
Specific purposes.
Oh, so, of course, yes, of course. I think that then it go back to what type of corpus you have at hand. As far as I'm concerned, there are not many freely accessible French corpus online. So you might need some time to identify one appropriate one for more specific users.
Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a very interesting
Thank you very
talk.
much.